Well, Bawku has erupted again. It has erupted in ways that many haven't seen in a long time. Today, something has been happening. The CDS and the IGP have been meeting. Why? Because the police themselves are under attack. They become the targets of the angry youth there, and there have been exchanges of fire between the youth and the police. We haven't seen this eruption, the way it has erupted like that in a long, long time. In fact, if you talk to security experts, this is the first time they have seen the police being pitched against the warring factions in Bawku. Because traditionally, what we've seen is that the military had been at the heart of the controversy and at the heart of dealing directly with the violent conflict that is there and taking on the hot spots there. But now we're seeing that the attention is now shifting from those warring factions, many of them are armed, focusing and targeting the police officers who have been posted to the ground. And so they'll be meeting today in an attempt to try and get some closure, get some unity, a uniform approach to dealing with the Bawku crisis, the police coming together with the military to do this. And obviously now that, of course, we've seen that the police officers themselves are now becoming targets of what is happening there. And we know that on the back of what happened last week when the police commander's residence was torched by the youth there, 2 police officers were also shot in cold blood and killed at the time. There was also an attempted arson on the home of the majority leader there. And that tells you a story about Bawku and how it exploded quite aggressively very recently. But it fits and sits within a major historical context. Since 1950, 75 years of unrest, and it has no sign of abating. There have been several approaches adopted to try and fix this particular problem, and it has claimed some 200 lives. And this is according to the former MC for the area who told us that. And so this clearly is an issue that demands urgent, immediate attention. In fact, there are some who are recommending on the back of this recent eruption that the president should declare a state of emergency in Bawku, because that then will require and necessitate the mobilization of all state resources to try and bring this under control and bring it under control immediately. People should be arrested and dealt with ruthlessly, including going into people's homes and retrieving arms in the hands of many people. In terms of the approaches that have been adopted, state-led initiatives had come in to try and deal with this matter. It has failed. We've also seen the traditional authority-led interventions, such as we've seen with the Asantehene, who has again been tasked to try and breathe life into the initiatives to try and get the peace back in Bawku. That too has wobbled a bit in terms of making any significant progress there. We're looking at NGO-led mediations efforts that have also been at the heart of trying to resolve this. That too hasn't yielded much in Bawku. Then there has been the chieftaincy ministry that had been at the heart of this, coordinating with your Tumfo-led initiative to try and resolve the matter there. Even there, if you look at their budget that you see behind me there, hasn't been great. But this is really a multi-stakeholder attempt to deal with the Bawku crisis. Now, this there is the biggest challenge Bawku currently faces. There's 1.1 million unregistered small arms and light weapons in the hands of residents. That is at the heart of the problem. The question you need to ask yourself is, where are these arms coming from? Who is buying it? Because the young people in Bawku certainly cannot be affording the AK-47 rifles that they use. They can't afford them. They can't even afford the bullets, right? The ammunition that you require to make a gun useful, to make a gun lethal. They can't afford it. Somebody is definitely funding the conflict in Bawku. And that is a part of the conversation that we haven't really focused on. Because if you focus on that and deal with the flow of arms into Bawku, you're dealing with the root causes of the problem. If the people are not armed, we won't have the eruptions that we continue having, such that 200 people have been killed. So where are the arms coming from? Tonight, we'll get to the bottom of this. Some very important revelations here as you get to the heart of this big problem. 1.1 million unregistered small arms and light weapons in the hands of very poor folks who don't have jobs, but they can afford an AK-47. I don't want to believe that. Something else is happening there that we haven't uncovered. And that's where we'll go first when we sit for a conversation. So we've seen the impact is devastating, right? Education has been affected, health has been affected, commerce has been affected. And yet the people say they will choose conflict over peace. There's something else happening in Bawku that we need to understand tonight on the back of this eruption. Stay with me after PM. And thanks for staying with us. And Bawku has exploded again. Today we see that the military and the police at the very top level are meeting to try and find a solution to this latest eruption. PMX was always brought to you by Syntax Tanks, the Stronger is Tough, Academic Times newspaper, Pepsi and Cavity Fighter toothpaste, all making it possible for us to bring you PMX Express into your homes every evening. I want to bring in my guest who's joining us tonight for a conversation on this all-important subject. Albert Sori is our correspondent in the Upper East region, and he's been doing a lot of work understanding the latest eruption there. And if he's just joining us, I want to bring him in to give us a sense of why this latest eruption and also the targeting of the police there and the latest situation as of tonight from Bawku, as we know that the military and the police doing everything they can to try and bring that place, the eruption there isn't under control. Reverend Intim Forjoy is a ranking member on the Defense and Interior Committee. He joined his colleagues last week to address a news conference on the particular subject of Bawku, asking for more efforts to deal with the matter there. He joins us via Zoom right now. And we'll also be joined by ONEP's national coordinator, who they've been on the ground doing a lot of work in trying to understand the dynamics on the ground and the enablers that has led to the eruption there recently. And over the years, really, which has claimed 200 lives, we know. Albert Yelyan is the national network coordinator. ONEP will also join me. But I want to go to Albert now. Albert, sorry, my correspondent on the ground. Albert, the fascinating thing about this latest eruption, the reason why it's getting a lot of attention is primarily because the police have become targets in this long-standing conflict. We know what happened last week with the eruption and the burning of the commander's home. Give us a sense of where Bawku is tonight. We know that 2 police officers on the back of that eruption, IGP visited the place. 2 police officers were shot and killed in the midst of all that. Is Bawku calm tonight? Hello, Albert, can you hear me?
Yes, Evans, I can hear you.
Great. Give me a sense of where Bawku is tonight.
Yes, Evans, it's been calm, but I must say that there's a lot of tension still in the atmosphere because of what happened this week and also yesterday. People feel that the sense of insecurity in the area is beginning to heighten. And it may also appear as though people are no longer even scared of the security agencies looking at everything that is happening. So today we haven't heard of any major issues, but there's some amount of tension in Bawku and in the surrounding districts.
Yeah, and Albert, apologies, we haven't challenged with the line there. Hopefully you can hear me. And we see a lot of the policemen on the ground. But walk us through why the police have become targets in this conflict. It's never been the case.
So what happened was that the Kusasi youth are accusing the police of escorting some women from their rival faction to come and trade in their market. Because of the existing conflict, the 2 ethnic groups have separate markets and they don't trade together. And from what the spokesperson for the chief has told us, it was a decision that the Bawku Naba made and directed that until the conflict is resolved and the necessary rituals are performed, then Kusasis and Mamprotisis should not trade together to avoid escalations and disagreements and all that. But they are saying that for some time, the police have been escorting some women from the Mamprosi side into their market. So on the fateful day, the police did this again, according to them. And so the youth, were not in agreement. They wanted to prevent the police from taking the women into the market. Now, the police tell us a different story. They say that they didn't really want to escort the women into the market. What they were doing was to prevent the youth from attacking the women, because it appeared that despite the fact that they didn't want the women in their market, they would have probably beaten up the women. And as officers of the law, they couldn't stand by and watch this. So this was where the whole thing escalated and became a sort of confrontational situation. Now, there are also two sides to how the guns were fired. The Kusasi youth and the Kusak Traditional Authority tell us that the youth were not armed and they were only protesting the escorting of the women into their markets when the police shot at them. The police also say that it was the youth who first shot at the police, and then they had no option than to return the fire. And in the process, one person was killed. Then there were some injuries to two people on that day. Now, in retaliation, some of the youth went on rampage, basically. First, they attacked the private residence of the Bawku Divisional Police Commander and burnt the house down. They also attacked a few houses which have been given to police officers to live in, and they call these places barracks. So they attacked them and burnt some of them. Later that night, they continued, and we are told they attacked a lot of police checkpoints and destroyed the barricades, and even destroyed some of the small cubicles that the officers usually sit in at the checkpoints. So the whole thing has to do with the fact that the youth are aggrieved. The Kusasi youth are not happy that this gentleman, who is a leader among the youth, was shot. In fact, when the IGP visited on Friday, the person who was elected by the Bawku Naba to speak on behalf of them told the IGP that the reason they are not happy is because the guy they shot was not armed. He was only in the midst of all of it, trying to calm down the youth. And they allege that the officer who shot him first shot him in the leg, and when he was down, the officer proceeded to where he was and shot him again in the chest. And so they want justice for this. The IGP assured them that he had listened to their concerns. He also appealed for forgiveness, but it seems that they weren't really appeased. But the attacks on the police officers, the two police officers today, from what the police statement is saying, is a different issue altogether.
Yeah, I mean, so that's the situation in Bawku tonight, which has left a lot of officers at the very senior level trying to get to the heart of. Thank you very much, Albert. I want to now bring in Peter Lanchinu Tobu, who is, of course, on the Defense and Interior Committee in Parliament, but also in Tim Fojo, who last week also spoke to this matter, asking for a bit more work from the state agencies. Mr. Tim Fojo, last week's point that you put out across, you were asking for a bit more work on this. Let me understand what your own appreciation of the situation in Bawku is, because obviously you're on the Defense and Interior Committee. What has been your briefing, if at all?
The death toll is rising. People are living in fear. Children can't go to school. There's no essential services that are thriving at the moment. Teachers are refusing posting to Bawku. Nurses are refusing posting to Bawku. Doctors are refusing posting to Bawku. Essential services are crippling, and this really die for our humanitarian efforts. What the minority is calling for is calm. We are first and foremost extending our condolences to the family, the bereaved families, and sympathies to the injured in the escalation. And we are also conveying our sympathies to the individuals and organizations who have lost property as a result of this escalation. But more importantly, what we are saying is that Bawku deserves peace. And for peace to prevail, we want all feuding parties to exercise absolute restraint. The restraint will help to a large extent to minimize reprisal attacks. Because if one faction thinks that they've been attacked and they also have to go on to reprise, then further escalation is going to be seen. We're also seeing a worrying trend where now the dimension, the new dimension the conflict seems to be taking is between one of the feuding factions and the security services. And so it seems like some reprisals between the youth on one side and the police. And that is very dangerous because the security is there to ensure the protection of our citizens. And so if the dimension of the conflict now extending beyond tribal conflicts into clashes between security agencies and the citizens that they are there to protect, that can also be very dangerous. So we are asking that the government has to step up a bit more. All of us are supporting the government as a nationalistic approach. We are saying that we support the government
Yeah.
in every
When you say step up a bit more, specifically, what do you want the government to do that they're not already doing?
Yeah, one of the first things they have to do uh, is to view this conflict as one which solution cannot be politicized. Every politician is also urged to depoliticize. If we are going to, as politicians, remove every tendencies and undertones and underpinnings of politics from this conflict, what we are likely to be left with is the chieftaincy and the traditional aspects which Otumfuo-led mediation is addressing and will address. Any aspect to politicize this conflict will exacerbate it. We have heard about some promises just in the run up to the elections and some pronouncements that were public to the effect that when a certain party is in power, Bawku conflicts escalate. When another party is in power, it goes down. All these, this is not the time for it. We need to backtrack. We need to refrain from it and to recognize that the solution to this to the conflict will be one, every politicization to be withdrawn from it. Two, the second thing we need to do is to also address, the challenge of sophisticated weaponry that has characterized this conflict. Because you look at the kind of weapons that our people, our brothers and sisters have access to in the conflict zone, and it is really troubling. It is so dangerous, and it is part of the reason why there's that seeming confidence to even have a standoff against the security agencies. Wherever that source of weaponry, gets into the conflict zone, government needs to take urgent steps to stop its
Yeah,
proliferation.
and you made a very important point about the weapons. Stay with me. I want to bring in Lanchini Tobu. Lanchini Tobu, so that point is at the heart of this crisis in Bawku, is it not? We know that the weapons are getting there, 1.1 million weapons in the hands of the youth there in Bawku. They certainly cannot afford the AK-47s that they are using there. They can't afford the ammunition and the bullets. Somebody is financing the conflict there. Why is government not tracing, doing a forensic analysis, tracking of these weapons and stopping the flow into Bawku? Isn't that where the solution is?
Hello, if I can hear you very well.
Yes.
Good evening to you and good evening to your cherished listeners. Let me first of all convey my deepest condolences to the bereaved families, and same to the Ghana Police Service, having lost some men in the field. But I want to encourage the men and women in uniform. In a situation like this, where it has become violent, professional hazards are expected. And that is why standard operating procedures are always strictly enforced to ensure that the buddy system is applied in your movement. You don't go anywhere into town alone. And you don't go into town when you are not in uniform. And you don't go into town when you are not permitted by your command. It is restrictive because it has become a red zone. The risk is high. And when the risk is higher, people in uniform must be extremely careful, very particularly when you position yourself as an impartial person in the middle, not a neutral person. I always expect the police not to be neutral. The police should not be neutral in Bawku. They should be impartial. Simply put, you are not a friend to any of the feuding parties. You are interested in them coming together and living peacefully. So if A does it wrong, say it so. If B does it wrong, say it so. But there shouldn't be a point where the impartial arbiter, the person who is in the middle to create a buffer to bring peace, becomes a party to the matter and is being attacked. That's very, very dangerous. When you are looking at the flow of weapons, my brother, we talk about the proliferation of illicit small arms and light weapons in this country. It's a big challenge, and we all believe that we need to do something very seriously to prevent it, very particularly in the volatile area like Bawku. It is possible that some people will be interested in radicalizing the youth. It is possible that people in armed trade will be making a lot of money from the area. So whatever it is, the challenge is that we should treat this conflict as a national conflict that requires some level of sophistication in handling it. And that is why I support His Excellency the President of the Republic of Ghana. When he was sworn in within the week, he said Bawku is a priority. And he demonstrated that. So we have the political will now to do what is needful. And he's appointed Otumfo. Otumfo-led mediation team is the one that will have to drive the solutions and bring us results.
I will come to the Otumfo-led committee first, but I still want to drill down to the issues about the weapon. That's what Otumfo, we talked about it quite a bit. What is you're also senior member of the Defense and Interior Committee. You, of course, now your party is in power. What is the government proposition to dealing with the flow of arms into Bawku?
Government has deployed a lot of security into Bawku. We have people from intelligence background. We have people from operational background. We have people with high-powered operational level, the military. They are all on the ground. And what is expected right now is that there will be a comprehensive report on the armed situation in Bawku. How dire is it? What can we do? This is nothing new. In the past, I have seen a lot of weapons recovered from Bawku. But you cannot cut off the flow into Bawku. So if you strike now and talk about disarmament, you talk about demobilization, you can disarm all the people. But are you sure that they will have so much trust in the process that they will not rearm?
Yeah, but to rearm, you must have a clear line of flow into Bawku. I mean, it's either coming by vehicle, definitely, or somebody sneaking it in on their person. And why can't that be a focus of the security operation?
That is a focus. All men and women know that their own lives depend on a very safe environment. As they try as much as possible to de-escalate the conflict, they try as much as possible to let the civilian population have some confidence in the men and women in uniform, that you don't need to carry a weapon to protect yourself. We are here to ensure that your life and property are protected. We are here to ensure that there will not be escalation of the conflict. We are here to prevent one feuding faction attacking the other. That is the role we are playing. And we are telling you that we are going to be very impartial, we are going to be very professional, and we have to engender trust between us. So if that is done, people will voluntarily decide that I am not going to rearm if my weapon is being taken away. But the fact is, do you trust the system that if I lose my weapon that I use to protect myself and my family, and the other party attacks me, how do I defend myself? So when the state security agencies bring that trust to bear on the people, and they believe that, oh yes, The state security agencies are capable of protecting us. They are capable of demonstrating that they are very impartial and professional. Of course, the lack of the weapon among the civilian population will begin to die. After all, we use money to buy it. And in many conflict situations, sometimes the weapon becomes cheaper even than food. In some other jurisdictions, it is cheaper to get an AK-47 than to get a bag of rice. When it becomes so critical of this nature, it becomes complicated. But we are not here yet. I think that I want to thank the Inspector General of Police for taking a bold step, going down there himself, and telling the people, listen, I am here to tell you that the men in uniform are here for you. We are not here against you. And we don't belong to any faction. That singular message communicated by the Inspector General of Police with his very presence should be enough for us to know that Ghana under His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama has placed the Bawku conflict in priority number one, because it is embarrassing to have a title outside there that when we talk about peacekeeping, professionalism is a Ghana thing. And when we go out there, we are respected so much. What is happening in our own country, we have to bring all this professional expertise to bear upon Bawku, and we'll find a lasting solution.
Yeah, I want to bring in Albert Yayan with one. Tell me about the arms question. What have you learned about where the arms are coming from, who may be the financiers, and how they're getting into the Bawku? Has one managed to get any intelligence on that?
I will rely on the condolences that have been rendered by my colleagues on the panel, and to say that people definitely would arm themselves for a reason, and I also like the issue about the supply chain. Now, the fundamental thing is that there is still a problem with the situation in Bawku, that the factions have not agreed on a certain outcome or certain outcomes over the conflict. And as Mr. Lanchene indicated, the fear of being attacked also has an element of whether or not they have trust for some of the systems that have been put in place. For example, the security presence, and if there have been recurrence of violence where people would rely on the use of arms, and then it becomes one of the things that they must continue to do themselves. So I think that we need to look at that very, very well.
Yeah, but do we know where the arms are coming from? Albert, do we know at all where the arms are coming from?
The arms, as we know, Ghana serves as a supply chain, and there have been several, so much literature out there that indicates. Now, we also know that we have a situation in Burkina Faso, in the Sahelian areas. There have been some other countries.
We're having a connection problem to him. Let's fix that so we can hear him properly. Can you hear me, Albert? Okay. While we try and get that connection addressed, let me put that same question to Tim Fojo. Mr. Fojo, so on the minority side, as far as this arms question is concerned, the weapons flowing into Bawku, what do you want to see done to deal with that problem?
Through the relevant state security agencies, where it's flowing from, the people behind it, and if there be any group of persons who probably are exploiting the situation and benefiting from it as an enterprise. It is a criminal enterprise, and that we need to nip it in the bud as soon as possible.
But how? How though? How? How should we do it?
No, we can't fully explore all the options here on set. But it's a conversation that behind the scenes, if it's required to give further details in how we can support in that regard, that can be done. But it's an urgent step that has to be done to stop the flow of weapons, its sophistication, and to be able to ensure that even what is determined to be within the conflict zone, we take steps towards it. But I also say so because given the strategic location of Bawku, not bordering our northern neighbors and also close to Togo, we are aware, the recent threats of extreme extremist actions and terrorism in the South region. And therefore, the continued instability of Bawku is very dangerous for the security of this country. Reports indicate that the conflict keeps spreading. It has spread all the way to Northeast region. There are recent reports suggesting that it's also spread to Ahafo region. We do not have to wait to such a time when Ahafo and Northeast conflict also become full-blown to the level that we are seeing. But the immediate steps that we need to take, which we have suggested to government, one, is for the security agencies to investigate the causes of the immediate escalation we have seen. That those have to be investigated and addressed immediately. Further to that, we're also suggesting that the Bawku Inter-Ethnic Peace Committee has to be reconstituted. It's a fantastic platform that offers feuding parties the opportunity for dialogue. Whilst at it, the government will have to lead the process of relevant agencies, engaging key stakeholders within this conflict, the youth, the chiefs, all relevant stakeholders. We must listen to them. Let us hear their concerns. Let us not assume that we are apprised with sufficient intelligence. It's an ongoing conflict, and we know how it antecedents, how it started, how it is going. We should, regardless of all the intelligence we may have, we need to take that step. Government must lead those efforts. Let us listen to them again. And as we hear them out, hear their concerns, and in order of priority, it will afford us the opportunity to have a very credible roadmap in addressing those concerns. We're also asking that the Otumfuo-led mediation, which is a process that is very credible, a process that we all believe in, and just as a historical perspective, President Akufo-Addo started that process, and everybody in Ghana knows the potency of the intervention of Otumfuo Asantehene in collaboration with very key, notable traditional rulers. And President Mahama has continued, that arrangement, which we all support. But for that process, to be able to gain the kind of traction we want to see, these escalations will have to de-escalate first. And as it de-escalates, then those processes will continue. But there's another concern that is quite worrying. That has to do with the morale of the men in uniform on ground.
You think their morale has been shattered?
It's one very unfortunate observation. So here, I applaud the IGP, Mr. Christian Tete-Yehono, for the very bold and brave, timely visit to the conflict zone and interacting with some key stakeholders and taking opportunity to also motivate the men. After that, we've had some videos purported to be coming from security officers, police officers in the zone. When you hear, I have had the opportunity to hear about 10 of such. It is really worrying. You can tell clearly people are in fear. If the security officers are in fear, and you hear guns being shot close by their dwelling around police stations, the sound of guns and all these creating fear. It just shows that this is not a time that anyone should think that Bawku conflict should be left.
I'm curious. So are these police officers or military officers you're speaking to? They're telling they are in fear of the latest eruption?
Yes, those voices that came up reported to be coming from various security operatives. Some of them who gave further information in the audios indicates that they are police officers. I'm sure I'll share with you so that you can also be at that same level.
And you verify that they are?
Very well, absolutely. So it's an indication that something more ought to be done. But in addressing that, one aspect that I disagree with, having commended the IGP, I disagreed in his engagement, was one commitment that came from him that urging the youth to put down their arms in exchange for recruitment.
Yeah.
If he wasn't taken out of context, and if that is truly what he said, I would urge him to abandon that commitment, because it would be very dangerous and would not assertively, assist in resolving the conflict. But in the posturing of the security agencies, I will continue to applaud them and urge them to be firm, to be impartial, like my colleague Honorable Tobu has indicated, and to be more diplomatic in the handling of the situation, considering the sophisticated emotions, the cultural sensitivities, the traditional sensitivities around the conflict in the Bawku enclave.
Let's address two quick points. One is that those who say, if you look at the latest eruption, what you need, a different approach. One is declaration of a state of emergency there ahead of the Otumfuo's initiative to now kickstart and breathe life into the talks to solve this. Do you support that action, state of emergency?
I think it is time for that action to be exacted so that further escalations will be ceased, because we need a state of calm for the Otumfuo mediation to gain grounds. And therefore, if I would have, my first choice would have been for the parties involved themselves to heed to our appeal, to exercise restraint and to have calm and to refrain from reprisal attacks. They themselves are able and they're capable. They can do it on their own. If we give them some time and this appeal goes and we hear them, and like I said, the government leads this effort and they are listened to, that calm can be assured without necessarily having to impose, state of emergency. But if that effort is exercised and still we do not yield the kind of calm that is expected, then it will be right for a state of emergency to apply in that case.
Okay. I want to bring in Yao Yang back. We lost him briefly before I hear from Tobu. If you can hear me, you were giving us the one-up analysis on the flow of arms. You look at the supply chain. You were telling us what you've learned about how the arms get in there and who may be financing it. Hello, Abed?
Yes. Yes, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yes. So, Honorable Forjo indicated, we have the Sahelian situation, and wherever there is the need for arms, then the arms will flow there. And we do know that there are also probably individuals who are facilitating the flow of arms into the area, And we know that even in past conflicts, for example, in Côte d'Ivoire, that people might be transporting arms from that area because the arms are no longer useful there. So the arms movement into Bawku is purposely because there is need for people to have arms. The populations have fears, and if the security is present and they are still in need of arms, then it tells us a different story.
Okay, so just a point on that. Clearly, we know where the arms are coming from. How do we stop the flow of arms to Bawku?
At the moment, yes, we need to begin to look at the substantive issue. What is it that is attracting the movement of arms into Bawku? And which is the issue that the factions still have a problem as far as the chieftaincy is concerned. Then we need to put in stringent measures around Bawku. It is interesting that we have a lot of deployment, high deployment of intelligence within the Bawku enclave, but we still have arms that are moving in there. Yes, of course, we have arms that have been there over the years. People have been stockpiling and trying to protect themselves. It has become a masculine kind of thing, and if there are still flow, there's still a flow into the area, we need to begin to question, are we really deploying intelligence enough around the Bawku enclave to prevent the inflow of new arms into the area? Because obviously people have the guns and they are continuing to find ammunition to use, then it tells us that there is something wrong somewhere.
And do you support the call for the imposition of a state of emergency?
I think that at the moment, there shouldn't be the need for a state of emergency. We need to have high deployment. We need to have the security working very closely with some of the individuals, even within Bawku, and civil society can support, the security agencies to be able to identify where the supply chains are, and the flow. And I always ask this question, is it not possible for us to seal some of the gaps, the routes that people can bring in the arms through? They transport the arms on other means, not necessarily in buses or vehicles, and it is possible to be able to identify that and find out which are the particular routes that people are able to pass through and then move in the arms, and especially the ammunitions. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult to stop it.
To track it. And then let me bring in Tobu into that conversation about the possibility of imposing a state of emergency. What do you make of that proposal? And Tim Ford just says, give the opportunity first to try and resolve this. If it doesn't help, impose it as a precursor to the full mediation efforts led by the Otumfuo. Where do you stand on the state of emergency?
Evans, when you find young people who are desperate, they are frustrated, they are angry, and they are willing to do the unthinkable in defending their position, when you go further to impose a state of emergency, you worsen the situation. What I want to suggest is the fact that Bawku peace process should be treated as a project. And in treating Bawku peace process as a project, the Otumfuo-led mediation team should develop a strategic implementation plan integrated enough to let the security people understand their role. Let the feuding factions understand the roadmap, and let the Ghanaian people know where we are going with timelines. If that is done, if you find a police officer in Bawku, he will understand that where we have gotten to, the military will have to take the lead. These are things that are done internationally and they are acceptable. They are best practices. When the conflict becomes violent, the military takes the lead and the police follows. But in normal conflict, where we talk about internal security, it is the police that are the lead, they play the lead role. And the military will only come in when the police invite them. In the case of Bawku, the military should be made to take the lead and the police will follow. But I will also suggest that because it is going to be treated as a project, we need a commander from the military angle who reports directly to the commander of the chief of defense staff. We need a police commissioner in charge of the Bawku operations who reports directly to the inspector general of police. What I'm just simply saying is that these people, one, the army should be under the office of the CDS. The police commissioner should be under the office of the IGP. These are short-chain command results that will be very quickly unfolding. But let me say this. What is happening in Bawku now, state of emergency immediately will not be, it wouldn't bring us any positive results. But I believe that the people of Bawku need to know that what is happening is bad. The peace process is on. The police, out of professional errors, believe that they can get better. And the police will demonstrate to the people that we are impartial. And in the impartiality, if there is a professional error, don't treat it as if we are just bad people and we are here to part of the faction. No, we are not going to join any faction. We are in here to create a buffer zone, prevent escalation of the conflict, and ensure that the peace process is run to the middle so that we'll begin to see results. So I don't support any
state of emergency. Okay. I mean, I'm grateful that all of you joined me. We're now awaiting the intervention by the Otumfuo trying to mediate this. Whether it happens in Bawku itself, considering how volatile a place it remains to be seen. Enjoy the rest of the evening.